We were told by like PR people that was like, all right, you're going to start this thing and everyone is going to hate you because you're not Ian and Anthony. And we were ready for that because they had like had guests on and other shows that they did on Smosh. And if it wasn't Ian and Anthony, they did not care. And they're like, all right, so just be ready for the internet to hate you.
And this is, again, the biggest like
Number
the YouTube
brand,
channel in the world at that point.
We eventually launched. We're literally just sitting in the corner of our crappy office, hitting refresh and just seeing the subscribers go up.
How many people came within the first couple of days?
Hundreds of thousands.
It starts with just taking that leap.
Man, you have to work hard. You have to be incredibly smart.
Choose something that even if it fails, you are going to be proud of it.
Doesn't matter how badly you got beaten in battle.
Be kind, be kind, be kind.
Become a better person, a better leader, a better business.
Go with your gut. I'm Samuel Donner, and this is Finding Founders.
The fastest launch at the time for like a 48-hour period. We were like the fastest growing channel.
Imagine being launched into YouTube stardom within hours. From his first channel playing video games with friends to joining Smosh and co-hosting Smosh Gaming, Josh Ovenshire, better known as Joven, quickly became a pivotal figure in YouTube gaming channels. Smosh Games showed there was an audience for friends just having fun playing games, and in consuming loads of content, Joven became a skilled storyteller, selling shows to Marvel, ArcadeCloud Cartoon, and even making a puppet show for Dungeons & Dragons. Today, he's working on new media projects and has a podcast with his friends. So let's see how it all started.
What was like the first like video game that you ever played? Because I feel like there's this narrative of gaming throughout your media career as well.
100%. I think the game was called Cowboy or it was called Outlaw. It was some Atari 2600 game that my grandpa had at his house because he had an Atari there for some reason.
Yeah.
And it was like this new medium where I was like, wait, what is this? All right, cool. And then, my dad had an NES and then later a Super Nintendo. He was always a big kid. So less playing games and more watching games, which I think is maybe why I started to enjoy stories so much. It's like, no, these are telling really cool stories. Yeah, Ninja Turtles are up there. Now I got to go fight Shredder. Great. It's like the cartoon, but longer. The first game that really drew me in as like, this is my experience playing a video game was Final Fantasy III for the Super Nintendo. And it's because I bought the game at $90 at a Toys R Us.
How old were you?
I've 6, 7. Like
you
young.
bought a $90 game.
It was shortly after a birthday and saving up from Christmas. And I was just saving up money for a video game that I didn't know I was going to get. I saw that one. I was like, I'm going to buy this one.
What attracted you to that one specifically?
The box art, literally just that. I had known it was good, and it was just this little moment of fate because it's probably one of the best games of all time. And it was just like this storytelling experience that I had no clue. Like you've never seen a movie with like the story of like Final Fantasy III, no matter what was like happening in the 80s. So.
What was the story like when you actually started playing it? What was it like to like be immersed in that?
It's this fantasy world where magic is really kind of suppressed, which I thought was interesting because I had like, seen so many things in the 80s where magic was fun and exciting. Those Arthurian fairy tales. But like, I think one of the things this game is known for is that at the halfway point of the game, the world ends. So there's still another like 30 hours of games after the world ends. And it just like blew my mind as like a 7-year-old.
And you're like, wow, like, because I feel like a lot of people see storytelling through like TV and film, and like, as you were growing up, there was now this new way to tell stories that may have been even more engaging than TV and film.
I would say like during that time, like especially in the early 90s, if you think of cartoons were telling very short stories, whether it was the 15-minute or 12-minute format with Nickelodeon or your Saturday morning cartoons being 23 minutes. X-Men comes along, X-Men 92, and even Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball to its own right. It's like you're telling these overarching stories, but they're still so like all over the place. And so many tiny details that sometimes carry over. And then this was like, here's this information, and it's going to keep on going and going and going and going and going. And you're like, we're not done yet. All right, this is concise. It was good.
Did you ever think that you wanted to be involved in that world as a kid? Was it even like an idea like, oh, one day when I grow up, I could tell stories like these, or like could be involved in video games in some way?
Not really. I remember, like, so my dad does special effects for movies, like practical effects for movies. And so like I grew up seeing very fantastical things just around me,
like
all the time. I think I was 6 years old. I was coming home from like first or second grade. I was a latchkey kid. And as I just barely cracked the door open, all the windows are closed, which felt like a little different. It was dark in there, but just enough light coming in. And there is a life-size velociraptor from Jurassic Park standing in my kitchen, and it moved and looked at me. Was that childlike imagination that the velociraptor moved? No, it was an animatronic velociraptor that my dad had brought home because he was working on it for one reason or the other. And I ran down, I shut the door, locked it fast.
Were you freaked out?
I was terrified because this was real. Yeah. It was just real. I ran to my friend's house. I was like, I can't go home. There's a dinosaur in there. He's like, oh, we have to go see the dinosaur. I was like, we cannot do that. It's a real dinosaur. It was the second floor where he lived. And so we were on like the balcony, and I'm like looking over, waiting for my mom to get home, and she's walking up. So I run down, and as I run up to her, I was like, you can't go upstairs. There's a dinosaur in there. Her response, there better not be a dinosaur in my living room. And then that's how we found out that it was an animatronic velociraptor.
So you were pretty like inundated with what it looked like to be into like film and TV.
So it was never like
a behind the scenes look.
Yeah, it was never like this big magical thing of like, you know, that I think that wonder is what makes children want to like choose what to be when they grow up. Like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a boxer. I want to, like, it's this sense of wonder of like, what is that life like? Whereas like I saw that life. I was like, all right, this is cool.
So when did you start to have wonder for, I don't know, the world that you would eventually build?
Man, honestly, I think it would have been around 2008. I was working on this low budget, early live stream YouTube stuff. And just trying to like work with friends and just like, oh, let's make stuff.
Was this like post college?
Yeah. I had actually gotten in a bad car accident my freshman year of college. And then felt very rushed to get out of the like, you know, pain to like go do finals. And I was like, no, this is stupid. I don't want to do that. That's not what life is about. I'm going to go do this my own way. And then I started filming paranormal documentaries.
Really?
That's technically where it all started. Like,
were you doing video stuff before that?
Just in like high school.
Yeah.
But because I knew how cameras worked, I knew how like editing programs worked and lighting to a certain degree.
Wait, so tracking back a little bit, when did you first start picking up a camera to like shoot stuff?
High school.
High school.
We had a news broadcast class. And I was like, because I had known about, you know, like the behind the scenes part, but never really the production side of it. And like, that's where I learned like, oh, this is how you shoot something. This is how you take the footage and you edit it. And that became like my art form versus, you know, my dad was like sculpting and making molds, which was, I could not do at all.
What was it like to create that first, like, do you remember like the first video or a couple videos that you made in high school?
Cringy.
The
answer is cringy because The Matrix Reloaded had just come out, I think.
Yeah.
And so we did this whole news broadcast for the school where it was themed as The Matrix. And for whatever reason, I was running that week's show. So from like literally doing like stop motion effects to make it seem like someone was getting like pushed across the table, and just I was literally running that news show.
Yeah.
And to see that final product, I had gone to like Hot Topic and bought an $80 trench coat for this. I thought it was cool wearing it. It was, you know, I picked up a name for myself after that, and maybe not a good name.
It didn't stop you from doing it more. Like there was something that you really liked about it.
It was fun. It was creating something. It was this weird narrative. It was just, I found it entertaining, and a few other people found it entertaining, and that was enough for me. A lot of time in theater too. Because I at the time thought I was going to do like on camera stuff. I was like, I'll be an actor, and that sounds exciting.
So when you got to college, what were you thinking that you wanted to do?
My focus was sociology. I was like, I want to know why people make the decisions that they make. And that just intrigued me so much, almost outside of, picking up a camera outside of like performing on stage, that intrigued me so much.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was going to have such a lasting effect. And I don't know where that stemmed from. I don't know. I was like, this sounds interesting. And so all of my courses were kind of based around that. Like don't even think I had like an English class. It was like criminology 101, sociology 101, psychology 101. I just wanted to know why the brain did it, what it did.
From that, how did you start to pick up the camera again and get into like the paranormal doc?
A friend of mine was like, hey, I'm in a paranormal investigation group. You remember how to use cameras, right? I was like, yeah, it's pretty simple. Like, what do you need? It's like, we're going to this place tonight at 11 o'clock at night. You just have to set up a couple cameras, hit record, and stay quiet. I was like, okay.
Had you been part of the paranormal world before? No.
I always enjoyed horror movies. Like, it's one of my favorite like genres of films. So it was like always exciting to be in that mix. But I would like approach things in such a, tangential way where, moving over to that and just kind of seeing, okay, this is how a camera angle should look for, a scene. All right, well, let's just widen it up, capture the whole room and see if, it's just exciting to watch this. And so I did it for this group, and then another group heard about it. It's like, you can do this. I'm like, yeah, I've got
wait. After when you actually did the shoot, what did you see? You see any ghosts?
Nothing. Those first few. But as we started, like, eventually I got on someone's radar, and I was traveling the country making paranormal documentaries for them.
What year was this?
That would have been 2006, 2007.
So you started traveling the country doing paranormal docs.
Yes.
Did you stop going to college to pursue that?
I had gotten in this bad car accident, and I was like, it's more fun to do what I want to be doing.
What happened with the car accident?
A drunk driver swerved in front of me, and so instead of hitting him, I swerved out of the way and hit a light pole. I wasn't like in the hospital or anything. It was just
scared you.
It was very, very scary.
Yeah.
Police and ambulance showed up. And you're like, you should not have walked away from this. I was like, cool. I'm going to walk away from this now.
And then just like, all right, because life's so short, let's actually do something.
Yeah. It was like, I don't want to help people retire. That's boring.
So you start doing these paranormal docs. You do the first one. Nothing really happens. But except you get on the radar of another paranormal group that wants you to do it. How did that kind of snowball?
It literally was just one giant snowball, because from like one group to another group, it was very like small, Southern California, like different groups. So they all kind of knew each other. And so I was just going on helping one other person until someone knew. It's like, oh, this guy's actually doing a documentary over at the Queen Mary. They need some help. Do you mind if I get you in touch? So I got in touch with this guy. We filmed a documentary at Queen Mary. That was really exciting.
Why was it so exciting?
Just because it felt so official. I felt like I was working on the production of something. And it kind of like brought me back to where like it kind of had started, where I was being excited to like hold a camera to tell a story.
What felt official about it?
That is a really good question. I think it was just because there was a director who was telling me what to do, and I was getting paid. I was getting paid. I think that's what made it feel like really official. And like the fact there was like, a DVD afterwards that they were selling. Like it was just legit.
Was the Queen Mary spooky?
Yes. So fun fact about the Queen Mary, it was actually used during World War II.
What is the Queen Mary?
The Queen Mary is this giant hotel ship that you can stay at down in Long Beach, and is known for being like the haunted ship. You can walk around the ship and there's ghosts all over. Most of which, no. Just as you walk around, there's nothing. But in the lower parts of the ship where people are not allowed to be at, because it's real dangerous. It's not like it's like put together. We climbed down like a rickety ladder. There's this giant hole in the ship. And while we were down there, just sitting in the dark, you hear other people speaking other languages. And you're like, you don't know German, do you? It's like, that was definitely not me. I'm like, all right, cool. And it's not like we were down there, for like a thing. We just opened some doors, had the right keys, and we're hanging down there and just like, this is why people aren't allowed here. It's really dangerous and there's some weird shit happening.
When you say like hearing,
you could audibly hear other people speaking different languages.
When you looked at the history, going back, like, is there anything that would indicate that would be?
Yes. That's the part where I'm like, am I allowed to talk about it? It was used during World War II.
Okay.
I think I'm allowed to say that much.
Okay.
There is a big history with the ship, which I know them as a company don't like to talk about, but the ship was used during World War II.
Whoa.
That's why you heard German and Italian down there.
That's freaky.
Yeah.
So did that experience make you, because like I can imagine if I had an experience like that where I'm hearing things that are unexplainable and spooky and basically hearing ghost talk, probably one of two things would happen. I would be like, I never want to go towards that again because that's scary, or that's super interesting. Let me dive further.
I dove so far in.
Yeah.
Like this was also like during the rise of all the paranormal TV shows that were kind of like popping up at the time. So I was involved with a couple of those shows like behind the scenes just because we had been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
And so it was just a real exciting time to be doing it. Then after a couple of years, it kind of like too much fake stuff started to come out about it, and they're like, all right, well, this isn't a viable like means of like television anymore.
But when you were when it was those early days, how did you get deeper and deeper into just making stories or telling stories?
I honestly just along for the ride. It was this super lucky. I didn't even know what to do next. I just knew that this is what I was doing at the time, and I wanted to know where it was going to go. I knew it wasn't going to be like a viable job. I was like 18, 19, just like going with it to see where it went. The person that I was doing the documentaries with, he eventually was doing some work with VH1 on the side, and he told me, he's like, hey, if you're looking for more consistent work, I can get you in touch with these guys over here.
So what's VH1?
So VH1, the television network that had really started to go into a lot of reality television shows with like Of Love. At the time, they had like, Flavor of Love, which had like 10 different spinoffs. They also had just a lot of like unscripted reality television. And so I was able to get a job there in the post-production department, technically, because I would be on set like all day getting all the tapes from the camera guys and then like labeling like what had happened in those specific scenes, like watching through just like key moments.
Was it boring?
Most of the time, absolutely boring. But there was always something weird would happen every single day. You're like, oh, that's the moment people are caring about. So I'm also like working with the story department to make sure that they're getting the stuff that they need and it's all labeled where they can find it. So I'm learning and watching how the story department is putting a story together from unscripted television, but also working with like the cameramen and how they film it and how just watching the production, how they're lighting stuff. And so I just like fell in love with unscripted.
At that time, did you kind of, because that was what, 2007, 2008?
That was 2008.
Was that the time you kind of discovered YouTube?
Yeah. So because of some downsizing, I was let go from the production company. And instead of like going further into like trying to find another like TV job, that's when I found out that Pepsi had just taken $1 million out of their Super Bowl marketing and had put it into YouTube promotions. So I was like, when Pepsi does that, this is what's next.
Right.
And so I started paying more attention to YouTube and working with friends just to like make fun little YouTube videos and music videos. We were doing like video game conventions and like interviewing people and turning that into like YouTube videos.
Video game conventions? So like what were you filming, and what was even YouTube or that side of YouTube like at that time?
That very, very much the Wild West. I think one of the first ones that we did was like Long Beach Comic-Con, because they had like a couple like video game developers that were down there. So we got to interview some people and like play the games. There was a Need for Speed game coming out. So we got access to like their launch party, and we were just like filming some of the video game stuff, talking to the developers. But during that time of 2005 to 2008, you were seeing, a lot of like fourth wall breaking, just like, talking to the camera, whether it was just like daily news with like Philip DeFranco or something, or some more personality based stuff like what Cassim was doing. But when I was jumping in, it was more of like this time where it was during the writer's strike. So, you see reality television really starting to like pick up, but you also have more people moving to YouTube as a way, like, I just want to make stuff. Maybe this is my way to break into Hollywood without going the traditional way. And so me and a group of friends were like, all right, let's do that. Let's go through YouTube to figure this out.
And how deep did you get into that?
Pretty deep, because as we were starting, just like, you know, fun fan stuff. Eventually I wound up doing some post-production for, it was like the second biggest web series at the time, called The Guild, with Felicia Day. So I was like really close to their production staff and like seeing how that was all made on a much smaller scale versus what I just saw VH1 doing. Eventually got a job at this company. They were called Mahalo, and they were doing like how-to videos, just trying to like capitalize on what Google would promote.
Because Google would promote YouTube videos.
Yeah. And, you know, we had this screen that at any given point in time, we knew the top 10 things people were searching on Google. And if it was like how to bake a potato, you would go into the set kitchen that they had and you'd film a video on how to bake a potato, how to cook a potato, how to peel a potato.
So you would just make videos for search engine. And what did, because that was like, I imagine that was one of the first channels to do something like that.
So we were definitely spamming the internet with just like 2-minute long videos.
How many videos were you creating?
So I was on the video game department, which is like how to beat this game, how to beat this stage, how to 3-star this. Each person on the team had to make 30 videos a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
30 videos a week.
We were literally the first gaming channel to put 1080p video game footage on YouTube.
Wow.
And we had to figure it out. Actually, one of the people I went on to start Smosh Games with, Matt Sohinki, like there to like 10 o'clock at night, like working with black magic cards, trying to like put them into these computers and see if we can output 1080p by putting the Xbox in and then back out into another monitor. And we figured it out.
Was there monetization on YouTube at that time? Like what did that even look like?
So we were making money because all of these would go to web pages. And so they were making money off of site traffic.
Oh, would Google link to the website or link to the actual YouTube?
To the website.
Oh, to the website.
They
okay.
to the website.
So it wouldn't go directly. So you would monetize the website traffic first and not the actual video itself.
But we were seeing on the video game side, people were subscribing and just like excited to watch video game content. And so slowly we would try to tell like the boss, like, we should actually be gearing this content for the people subscribing and make gaming content specifically for them. And they did not like that. They're
really?
Like,
why?
Because it was against their business model. He was also not a good boss person.
Is Mahalo still around?
No. They because Google changed their algorithm and how they were pushing content, and they were staying away from people creating spam. And like that side of the business like just died in a month. Yeah.
So you were doing Mahalo, you were seeing like people subscribing and wanting video game content.
Learned everything about SEO
online.
Yeah.
So was there a point where you're like, maybe I should just focus on the video game stuff?
Once I saw like numbers going up and I saw what was getting views and like where retention was landing, because like we do these walkthroughs and like no one wants to see part 27 of a Candy Crush walkthrough, but people are paying attention to these reviews that we're doing on games. People are paying attention to the more comedic pieces that we're doing.
So you were like looking to see if like you could, I don't know, create something in that world.
Honestly, it was just learning the trends, seeing shifts of like what people were focusing on, what they wanted to watch, how people were commenting, and really understanding like the viewer dominated space where, oh, we're making content for the people watching this and commenting on it, and we can make something that they want the next day. But I was eventually let go from Mahalo because I wanted to make that kind of content, and they wanted part 27 of how to beat Star Wars, Jedi Outcast.
So how did you get to the next job?
By luck, really. So one of the hosts that was at that company with This Weekend and Mahalo, her name was Andrea Renee, has gone on to have still an amazing career in the gaming space. She went to a company called Clever with 2 V's. And she had brought some friends of mine over who again, Lasercorn and Soinky, we'll get to them in a second, but they worked on Clever Games, but there was Clever Movies, Clever News, Clever TV. So it was like a strong brand. I came over to work on the Clever Movies channel and wound up helping turn it from a, red carpet, interview site to more like, oh, who is that Thanos character teased at the end of Avengers?
Mm.
All right, it's this. And started doing like deep dive nerdy stories that started to like pick up views. And so I got moved from movies to games because I was good with that stuff.
How did it start to pick up views? Like, what was the increase? What did it look like?
Two things were happening around that time. Was information about Dark Knight Rises started to come out. So I remember like a Catwoman story like getting a lot of attention, as well as Marvel was like in their Avengers or going into their Avengers era at that time, and so like really kind of talking about just that and going into like deep dives of characters, and people were searching it because they wanted to know more about the Marvel universe.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really interesting because like all this stuff we kind of take for granted now, but this was like the first attempts at getting news out there, and videos out there
up on
about
what people were excited about.
So when you were working on Clever Movies, then Clever Games, that company Clever would eventually get acquired, right?
They got bought by another company called Alloy, and Alloy owned Smosh.
And what's Smosh?
Smosh started in 2005, so they were part of that early YouTube group, and they were just doing like sketch comedy. Two guys, Ian and Anthony, just two friends out of high school making stuff.
And in the early days, they were the fastest growing channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
Had you heard of them when you got acquired by Alloy?
I hadn't. I don't even think I had seen any of their videos before that, just because I was focusing on other stuff on the internet. But we were, the three of us, me, So Inky, and Lasercorn, were asked into the boss's office at the time, and we were always thinking we were about to get fired because we couldn't get views where they wanted them.
Yeah.
And they're like, so do you guys want to work with Smosh? We're like, who dat? They pulled up their channel. We just saw how many subscribers they had. We're like, yes. I don't even know what you're about to say, but yes, we'll do whatever you want with Smosh. Absolutely.
How many subscribers did they have at that point?
Millions. What did that? I don't think it was at 15 yet. So it would have been somewhere between 8 and 12, I think.
Why is that exciting to you? Like being part of this channel?
Job security. Really a lot of that. I had no clue the phenomenon that was Smosh. I just saw a channel with subscribers and viewers, and I was like, oh, I knew this YouTube thing works. They're showing that it works.
What was it like to start working with them?
A whirlwind. Like we had started, that would have been the summer of 2012, getting ready and just prepping and coming up with ideas for shows. We met because we were filming an announcement video. So we were still filming together. Paperwork was signed. We didn't know if we were going to like each other, if we were going to work well together, but we were going to film a sketch for them. We were told by like PR people that it's like, all right, you're going to start this thing and everyone is going to hate you because you're not Ian and Anthony. And we were ready for that because they had like had guests on and other shows that they did on Smosh. And if it wasn't Ian and Anthony, they did not care. And they're like, all right, so just be ready for the internet to hate you.
And this is, again, the biggest like
Number
the YouTube channel in the world at that point. So you're going to be hated by a large portion of the world.
Yeah. Even that didn't affect us. We're like, are we still getting paid? But we eventually launched, and So Inky and I have this fun story where we're literally just sitting in the corner of our crappy office, hitting refresh, and just seeing the subscribers go up by thousands each time. We're like, what is happening?
So what was happening?
Just everyone was like, the announcements had gone out, and
what was the announcement for?
So Smosh had a video go live on their channel saying, you know, it was a sketch talking about people want us to do more gaming content. All right, well, let's launch a gaming channel. Well, who's going to be on it? Well, these guys. And then we pop up and wave. And so that video had gone live on this YouTube channel with like 8 million subscribers, and they just started hitting the button to come over to Smosh Games. I know that at the time, Smosh Games had gotten the milestone for the fastest growing to 2 million subscribers. And I think we had done that in 3 months. What's funny is I had filmed a reality show the summer before we launched. I was on King of the Nerds for TBS. And that aired in January of 2013. Smosh was in September, or Smosh Games was September of 2012. I remember going to Disneyland in January, and I was getting swarmed because of Smosh and King of the Nerds. And so I was like, I didn't know what life was at that time. I was like, this is a very weird thing, because
swarmed, as in like what would happen?
Like one person would notice and want to get a picture, and then another person would notice, and other people were like, oh, it's this guy from TV. All right, well, let's take a picture. It would eventually spread to people who had no clue who I was trying to take pictures, and like security would actually have to like push us forward and keep us going.
Was that weird?
It still feels like a dream.
Yeah.
That should not have happened to me, the person that just years before was hunting ghosts and helping people with their finances.
The PR team had prepared you for people to hate you. Was that true?
It wasn't. People thought we were great. People thought we were funny. They enjoyed us. They started following us on social media, and it was all, I think it was also just the Smosh audience really attached to us, because they're a bunch of weirdos and we were a bunch of weirdos. And so we just all kind of connected on that. And because I was paying attention to what worked on the internet at the time, there was a lot of Let's Plays, sometimes picture in picture, sometimes just a voice behind doing Let's Play videos. And I was like, we're not going to be that. Let's pretend like we're friends. We were friends, sitting down to play video games and just break down the fourth wall and make it that the audience is hanging out with us. And that's the type of videos we're going to make. So it was a different type of gaming content.
And it feels authentic and it feels real.
It was genuine.
And so what was the trajectory of the channel as you're like a couple months in? Like what did it feel? What were some markers that you're like, oh wow, this is like really going somewhere?
So, a couple months in, we wound up doing like the fastest to 2 million subscribers. That was a big deal. We, as employees of Alloy, we had a really crappy salary. I think it was like literally like $45,000 a year. And this channel is making millions of dollars. But they gave us bonuses based on subscribers. We hit the subscriber bonuses in, I think, 3 weeks. Wow. So we went back to our boss. We're like, hi, yeah, we did the thing. We have 1 million subscribers. You said we would assess and look at our bonuses again. And they're like, oh yeah, you hit that way faster than we thought you would. So we can't. And we're like, cool. Thanks for screwing us over in our contract. This is great though.
But what was it like the crew, like just bonding? And
at first it was literally just us. It was nice to go up to Sacramento and hang out with Mari and Ian and Anthony, and
Sacramento
friends.
That's where Smosh was based.
Smosh was filming. And so we would go up there once every 6 weeks, 5 weeks to just film a bunch of videos and then come back with the footage. And so we instantaneously all became really good friends. We just were able to hang out with each other. I think it was also because because we weren't awestruck by them. We're like, I don't know, these Smosh guys, cool. They're awesome. And so we just hung out. We were just playing video games together, eating food. It was fun. And then we'd bring all the footage back, and it would be me, Lasercorn, and Sohinki editing 13 videos a week. And slowly we were able to then bring in some extra editors.
But then you were building the team around you.
They started to spend more money on the crew, which was good.
And so you were able to just like be a personality.
And that's eventually what it became. Playing video games for fun, turning those video games off to turn on a different video game to then work. We were still in charge of creative, which was awesome. And I grew off of that. And I think what defined the rest of my career so far. But yeah, we were just really, really close friends, because eventually Mari moved down to LA. The productions for Smosh moved down to Los Angeles. So we would spend 10 hours in the office together, leave, get dinner together that we probably already had lunch together, and then we would go home, to which some of us were living with each other just as roommates. So we were just like this.
So the squad was pretty tight knit.
It was very tight, to the point where it would be kind of hard bringing like guests in, because no one could keep up with us because we were so used to each other. It was just this tight knit group that was moving.
Yeah. That's a weird problem to have, like bringing guests into like a group that's so strong.
And that's why we'd film with like the WWE superstars every now and then. They were the ones that could keep up the most, because they were used to being over the top energies as well.
Right.
So they can kind of go back and forth with us, which was good.
So this stuff happens. You're getting like approached by fans. The views are going up. The subscribers are going up. You all move to LA.
Yeah.
How do things like start to snowball even more? Because you would, I mean, this is a little bit later, but I mean, you would travel around the world with like these people and like do massive brand deals with some of like the biggest companies in gaming.
Yeah. So 2012, 2013 to 2014 was, I would call it still a small channel.
Yeah.
But by all means, we were like, we had beaten Matt Pat and PewDiePie at the Streamies for like best video game channel.
Were you ever thinking about your own brand and own channel?
They gave us permission to make our own YouTube channels, which we did not own at the time. The company owned the channel, so all the CPM was going to them. Again, at
your
that
personal
time,
YouTube channels.
your personal YouTube channel. So at the
how
time,
did you feel about that?
We did not know that we were being screwed at the time.
In your mind, like, what is a way to structure that to where it like feels good for both parties?
Honestly, I think I did it as well as you could. I don't know if I would change anything to do something smarter because we were growing at the time. I would have maybe just had a better outlook about it, because literally I would have a YouTube video hit 250,000 views and I would look at that like it was a bad thing. I was like, well, Smosh Games got 2 million. Why am I only getting like an eighth of this? All right, well, I don't want to focus time on something that's not doing something for me. So I would have had a healthier mindset with it, because I was eventually getting brand deals because of it. And so though I
for your personal channel,
for my personal channel and brand, so the Jovenshire Instagram would be able to do a brand deal.
So you were able to kind of parlay
the
Smosh Games fandom into like,
and meanwhile my socials were growing and growing and growing. And I think that's also when I knew when to leave, is because the growing had stopped. I was like, all right, we've hit our peak.
When did you feel like things peaked for Smosh Games?
2014 to 2017 was like us at the highest that we could be. So I would say
what did that look like?
2017. At one point in time, we had 70 million views a month.
Wow.
Which the most popular television show in reruns couldn't hit those views.
Yeah.
Again, we were at that time like 6 videos a day plus library views. YouTube has an advantage over traditional, but 70 million views a month is
a lot of views.
Crazy. Worldwide views.
Yeah.
And so because we had all this money coming in with the CPMs, the company, the brand deals were big, we started to escalate our content. We were traveling around the world. I filmed a travel series with Xbox where I was in a $250,000 car with a professional driver, and we drove from Italy through France down to Spain in a series of like 4 episodes. Mari and I wound up filming a travel show in Egypt. They shut down the pyramids so we could go into those by ourselves.
Wow.
That Egypt shoot, we did that the week after I got married. So we some of us would joke that I would get married and then a week later go on my honeymoon with Mari, who I did not marry. And my wife was like, have fun in Egypt. I'm like, okay, bye. And I was gone for like 2 weeks. At the end of that trip, I was sitting in the airport with the creative director, and I was like, I think when we get back, I think it's time to start having a conversation on what life looks like without me here. Because
why?
Lasercorn and Soinki had already left. I could see the revolving doors starting to happen a little bit with the company. I also had done so much, and I don't know what had caught up to me, but I wanted to know, can I be successful without Smosh? Or am I only successful with Smosh? And either way, I knew that Smosh would end for me at some point in time. I could not be...
You wanted to end on your terms,
yeah,
too.
I wasn't going to be able to retire pretending to be 16 years old on the internet anymore. I felt like the adult on the channel. We had younger cast coming in, and I loved them. They were great to work with. But I definitely just felt like my time was kind of coming to an end. And, you know, I had the conversation. I was like, I want to know what's next.
What was your like exit strategy? How are you going to maintain an income, because this is basically, you're leaving the nest, striking out on your own. It's kind of spooky.
When you looked at my socials at the time, they weren't even impressive to what some of the what other YouTubers had. I think I was at 450,000 subscribers, maybe 475 on Instagram. And
that is big.
And it was just comparing, to the people around me at the time, friends with these big YouTubers, just oh yeah, 2 million on Instagram. I was like, all right, well, I've got 450. Let's see what we can do with this. But brand deals were coming in, and seeing how much I made a year on that, I was like, I can do this. As long as this doesn't stop. So in 2018, the summer of 2018, my contract ended, and I was like, I've got, brand deals coming in. I'll come in as you need me for some stuff, but I think we're done full time.
Was that sad?
Yes. It felt like, because it was our baby. We had made that from zero. It was in good hands. It just always felt a little weird coming back, it wasn't mine anymore. And I eventually became okay with that.
It's weird. It's weird to create something and then kind of give it away.
Well, that feeling only lasted for a couple of months until the day Defy died.
What happened there?
So Defy was the parent company that owned not only us, but Screen Junkies, the Clever brand. They had this big ordeal that I still don't know if I understand the financial side of it, but they shut the company down one day. They just memo went out today's your last day. The entire company's shutting down. Good luck. And so that was weird, because we're oh, the thing that we built, it doesn't exist anymore at all.
So that implodes. Defy basically goes belly up, and the Smosh channels get frozen. Right? It's just no one, they're not allowing anyone to use them, and they're kind of caught in limbo, and they all just go silent, right?
Yeah. Ian, I think, was able to get the login for YouTube, and then was able to start uploading stuff and fixing the so that he was seeing all the analytics and everything. But all the other brands, everything kind of just went silent. Few of us got together, did our own individual stuff, did our our couch videos, all right, Smosh is dead, I wonder what's next in my life. But then, Mythical came around and picked up Smosh. And so it did find its second life. I think all the companies got picked up, or
eventually
most of the companies got picked up somewhere.
So what were you doing?
I had conversations about maybe coming back to see, what would it be like. But once Mythical came in, I saw the contracts there, and I was like, I'm not going to walk back to what things were like in 2012, 2013. I left. What
were the contracts like?
Making half of what I was making, and not able to create content that would seem similar to the content that could be on Smosh games. And that was upsetting, because I understand, they don't want to compete internally, but also Smosh Games was a lifestyle channel at that point in time. Whether it was a lunchtime vlog, or maybe we're playing a board game, or maybe we're playing video games, all of which, if I did anything on my channel, it could seem like it would be content for that. So I wouldn't be able to create the stuff that I was creating at the time on my own. So I had to kind of stick to my guns. I was like, no, this is not a good contract for me right now. I've got some momentum. Let me see what I can do.
So what do you start to do?
Put pitch decks together, start trying to get meetings wherever I can get meetings. And I started to get lucky with one thing after another. I wound up selling a digital show to Marvel and Fox Next,
which is crazy. And that was pretty.
That was
soon after
it was
you left.
I felt confident. I was like, I'm going to be able to do this, I guess, because Marvel is having a conversation with me.
Wow.
It does sound a lot cooler. When I say I sold a show to Marvel and Fox Next, at the end of the day, I was making an update show for one of their video games.
Yeah.
Which, still cool, still great. I get to put it on the resume, but it's not like I was a showrunner on Moon Knight or something.
Right. When did you start to do shows that you were really excited about?
Because I did not have a production budget, and I had just come to a place where if I wanted to make anything, there was some money in production to try to make it. So now I was looking at I know the stuff that makes me happy. I know what's fun for me to talk about. I know what my audience resonates with. So all the information I'd known and learned for years, now applying for myself, but finding other ways to do it, finding other people to fund it, whether it was someone that had a studio and we were promoting the studio, or just doing smaller pitches at, you know, other YouTube channels, not necessarily to join them, but to like, I can make you a show. You get my social behind it. So I'm going to be pushing this show. It's going to be more subscribers for you and all that fun stuff. And that was essentially my partnership with the YouTube channel ArcadeCloud. I had created a cartoon for them called Worst Ways to Die. And that was a long process. It was eventually a different show, but we had to like switch for like legal reasons. And I was like, well, how about this show? And, you know, that's where I learned the art of making cartoons and that production process. And that I fell in love with immediately. I was like, I want to do more of this.
That wasn't the Magic the Gathering with puppets.
No. So that show started to air in February and then March of 2020. And they made a very good decision. They did not want a show called Worst Ways to Die in March of 2020 when the pandemic started. So they cut that show short. That's okay. And then, you know, I was going for a couple months, like, I'll find my next job. There's no jobs anywhere. We're in a shutdown.
Yeah.
Production is shut down. Brand deals aren't spending money. So there's no income at all. But I had this pitch that I had sent into Magic the Gathering the year before for like a green light program that they thought was really cool. And then it went silent. In 2021, around October, maybe a little bit earlier, late summer, early fall, Wizards of the Coast got in touch with me, someone that I had seen the pitch while they worked at Magic the Gathering. Like, okay, you want to do D&D with puppets that takes place in Magic the Gathering. Cool. What if you do that for what if you do that for Dungeons and Dragons proper? And we're like, yes. Do you remember the budget we needed to pull that off? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, okay, cool. So you want to make a show? And so we made essentially a TV show.
Wow.
We were the first production during the pandemic that was like an official production. Like we went through, you know, Los Angeles city permits to film. We had like all of the permits you need to film in a studio. We had all the paperwork. We were the first ones to do it. Larger production companies were paying attention to us to see
like how can you navigate this.
We were the guinea pig.
Wow.
We were the little bird going down into the canary mines to see, like, is this going to work out for them? Is their production going to shut down? We pulled it off. We spent a large chunk of our TV show production was on, you know, COVID testing and all of the practices needed early on. It was intense.
Wow. And how did it turn out?
I think great. When I was working with them, the whole point of the show was to make something that they could then try to pitch and sell off platform. But the way the contract worked, I had, you know, I could release the episodes on YouTube. So this giant show was just being released on my YouTube channel. I was like, do you want to put this on like the Dungeons and Dragons channel? Like, you want this on mine? Okay.
Yeah.
And so, you know, view wise, it did well. It was what it was. It had a lot of fans showing up from around the internet that weren't even Jovenshire fans, that weren't Smosh Games fans. They just found this thing for tabletop gaming. And creating that was interesting because we wanted to have an equation, because Critical Role still absolutely huge in the D&D tabletop space. Their shows are like 3 hours long, huge lore, lots of episodes. So we wanted to make, okay, what is the opposite of that, just in case if someone wants to get into this for the first time. So it would just be something else that maybe isn't going to get compared. And so we made, you know, 23 30-minute episodes, 30-minute episodes that you don't have to know anything else in the world. You don't even know how to play D&D. We're going to explain this enough for you. So by doing that, I think it really attracted a lot of people that they got into the game because of the show.
That's super exciting.
Yeah.
I want to go a little bit towards creating Ogsog because I'm curious about how that started and how that ties into like any of like the personal YouTube stuff that you were doing.
So I had really slowed down on my own YouTube stuff. At this point in time, I was able to get a job with Joven and TMB. I was working on Fail Army and a couple other channels with them. So I was getting my YouTube fix. I wanted to work for other people. I didn't want to be a YouTuber. But I'd still be hanging out with my old Smosh Games friends, Lasercorn, so Inky Mari. We'd literally just be hanging out in Lasercorn's garage, just talking, having a good time. We're like, this is funny. Should we be recording this for some reason? It's like, what are we gonna do? Put out a podcast? Yeah. Like, why not? Like, and again, not with the aim of like being a successful podcast channel, as I'm now speaking on a successful podcast channel. Literally, we just wanted to hang out with each other. And like, this gives us a reason to do it. And, you know, we can make content out of it. And we kind of didn't think it was going to get a lot of steam because, you know, none of us had really been doing stuff on the internet at that point in time for a while. But we launched, you know, a podcast and a Patreon, and the Patreon got to a good spot where it was paying for itself. Yeah. Pretty quickly.
And like the views, I mean, you got to like a couple, like 100 and something thousand subscribers pretty quickly.
I was aiming, I was like, if we hit 125, I'm happy. And at that point in time, we had like 60, and it kept growing and growing and growing. And I was like,
it's at 127 right now.
We're at 127. And, you know, it just, we got it. But once we hit that milestone, to me, it was like, okay, well, what now? Well, I'm not going to chase, you know, another milestone because what is that going to do for us? The landscape of YouTube had changed. We were creating the same kind of content that we had created 10 years before. We were really playing to a nostalgic audience. Not at all a bad thing. It's what we loved making. I think there's a lot more room for growth.
But the expectation wasn't this was going to be a channel with millions. This is just like a place for all of you to come and to hang out.
And secondary income outside of a CPM on YouTube, that has changed. You don't see as many brand deals anymore for people. When you do, it's not something you can kind of live off of. It's spread to much larger people than us. And so, you know, it makes Augusog a little bit more intimate because now we're making the content for us and the people who like it.
Yeah.
It's not a business. It's not a business model. It's just, hey, we're still kind of good at this, and it gives us a reason to hang out now.
Yeah. So looking at things today, you recently had like a short story that was sold. What are you like most excited for right now?
We are at one of those moments that I've seen happen time and time again. That happens every 3 to 5 years where everything just kind of shifts and you have to figure out what's next and then go with it. But this time, no one really knows what's next. No one can tell what movie is going to do well. There's too many streaming platforms. There's too many streaming shows. So no one knows what show is going to hit and, you know, cause like a season 2, season 3 to come after it. Now, for me, I know how to tell a good story. I've learned how to make really good unscripted content. So now I just get to trust that my skills are good, and I'm just going to use that to tell exciting stories. That's where the short story comes in. You know, it's for this new app, Storyverse, where it combines animation with short stories, and you get to watch and read these stories. And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah,
that is a unique way to take in content. I'm in. And so, yeah, it's seeing if we can continue the momentum into traditional television, because I've been working on scripted and unscripted shows for Fast Networks, which is free ad-supported streaming television. So something you'd see on, you know, Pluto or Tubi or, you know, free television, essentially. I think that's the future of media because there is too much so much saturation of content, and it all costs money now. Where's the free content? I'm like, let's make stuff for that.
Yeah, and it's like YouTube and Fast, basically.
Yeah.
Right now, like the people in this house, we all have like a YouTube channel together, and it's an ensemble cast, and it kind of feels similar to
enjoy that, live that, and love that.
What advice would you give to yourself of anything you would do differently or the same back at the beginning of Smosh Games, and what would you give us?
I would say the lesson I learned way too late, but I'm glad that I learned it regardless, is that you get to define what success is to you. OGSOG is successful because it pays for itself. You don't need to have, 10 million views on every single TikTok and pulling in $250,000 from brand deals, because that's not something you can repeat. That's not something you can do often. And if you compare yourself to that goal, you're just going to seem like you're failing, and it's going to destroy your mindset. I give the same advice to young me, just to kind of appreciate that time and realize that you are successful in that moment. It really put my last 15 years in this space into perspective, and also just allowed myself to be free to create more stuff and not worry about how many views I got. Is it a good story? Was it funny? Did it make me and my friends laugh? That's success.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend. If you have any questions or comments, DM us at Finding Founders Podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Finding Founders is produced and hosted by me, Samuel Donner.
Our audio editing team lead is Ashley Jimenez, with support from
Jessica Morales, Miley Lipton,
Siyu Pan,
Kenny Ray,
Josie Yo,
Matt Fernandez,
and Merritt Hill. Our outreach and research team lead is Desiree Nunez, with support from Marissa Granados, Monica Lee,
Sarah Tiersma,
and Yao Will.
To see more of what we're up to, subscribe to our newsletter at findingfounders.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.